In Clause 29, Amendment 53C, Lord Moylan.
My Lords, we come to a series of amendments that relate to transport and the Department for Transport. If I could begin with a few preliminary remarks. The first is to apologise to noble Lords that I didn't speak at second reading on this bill. I wasn't able to. The second is to thank the Minister and his officials for the engagement and the helpful meetings and briefings that I had in preparation for today. The third preliminary remark is to say that as a class, the amendments relating to the transport section of this Act are generally very trivial and minor indeed. If this is the government's engine for growth, there isn't a great deal of puff in it. One of the amendments, I doubt we'll discuss it, is so bold as to repeal a redundant clause in the Transport and Works Act. Well, for those of us with a tidy mind, that's not a bad thing to do, but it's hardly going to shake up the economy. Nonetheless, the government's amendments deserve a degree of scrutiny, and we shall attempt to do that in the course of the next few hours. I turn, therefore, first of all to amendments relating to Clause 29, and to move Clause 53C standing in my name, and to speak to 53D, 53E, and 53F. I shall also speak to Clause 53M, to Amendment 53M, I beg your pardon, beg my Lord's pardon, which relates to a later clause in the bill. What these amendments have in common is that they relate to charges. Clause 29 creates a category of person, of legal person, known as prescribed authorities. They are not named who these prescribed authorities are, and these prescribed authorities are going to be able to charge highways authorities for their services, but the services that they're going to be charging for are not specified either. All of this is to follow in regulation. Now, one can hazard a guess that the sort of body that might be a prescribed authority for this purpose might be Natural England or the Environment Agency or whatever. But my first question and the purpose of the first few amendments is to elicit from the noble Lord who these people actually are. The second would be to try and establish what range of services they're going to be able to charge for, whether services that are currently regarded as routine and freely available are now going to become a charge upon highways authorities. We'd also like to know whether in setting the charges they're going to be limited by the very common principle amongst public authorities that charges should only be set so as to cover costs, and that taking one year together with another, they do not generate a surplus. Is that going to be the case in relation to these charges or not? And if not, what limit will be placed on their ability to set those charges? The final question I had is slightly a detailed question for those who are involved with local authorities who are also highways authorities, is whether the payment of these charges by highways authorities is something that could fall upon a parking revenue account and could be drawn from a parking revenue account, or whether they would fall on the general fund. It would be helpful if the Minister could tell us that as well. Turning briefly to Amendment 53M, this relates to a clause which allows highways authorities to charge applicants. So this is, if you like, a mirror image, or maybe to some extent a pass-through clause. It's not objectionable in itself, but there is again the question whether these charges are going to be set so as to cover costs and so that there is not a surplus generated taking 1 year with another. It would be very helpful, I think, to all noble lords if the Minister could answer those questions. I beg to move.
Amendment proposed, clause 29, page 41, line 37. At end, insert the words as printed on the Marshall list.